My name is Jim Ryan, and I'm the new Instructional Designer here at EWU. My job here is to take a look at the programs, courses, and people from a different point of view, to see how all these Lego pieces fit, and to imagine how I can help put them together differently to make something new and amazing. Welcome to the Play to Learn podcast. Today, I'm talking with Doctors Christopher Kirby and Mimi Marinucci, two very passionate and hilarious professors in the philosophy program at EWU. We go deep into the spicy depths on the topic of AI, so prepare yourself for a bit of digital stimulation. All right, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Well, essentially, this is for my Play to Learn podcast, but AI has definitely been an interesting topic. One is very popular and with very strong opinions here at Eastern Washington University. And I'm here with Christopher and Mimi. And do you want to tell us a little bit about yourselves?
You go first.
Oh, I get to go first.
Yes,
Thank
please.
you. Well, I'm Mimi Marinucci. I teach in both philosophy and gender studies. I've been here since fall of 2000. So like 1,000 years I've been here. Well, 25, 26 years. And my most recent book has to do with intimacy, relationships between humans and robots and AI, but primarily thinking about sex robots.
Can you tell everybody the title? The title
Well, it's called Digital Stimulation. I know, I'm so clever.
When I saw it, I said, "Oh, that's so Mimi."
Oh my God. We're going to have to dive into that.
But I was like, once I thought about that title, I was I can't not.
You have
I
to.
can't not.
It's a married to it from beginning.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
In the cover image, isn't it a robotic hand?
No,
No?
no.
Okay, okay.
It's just like,
But I imagine that.
that was never been clever enough. No, it's a black background, like dark gray black background with like the green, that sort of obviously computerish writing.
The
font.
Matrix
Yeah,
style
yeah.
stuff. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but that would have been clever, actually.
I guess that was just wishful thinking.
Yeah.
I thought I saw that, but
Well, it wasn't just trying to be naughty. Of course, I was trying to be a little bit naughty.
Yeah.
But I was also thinking about, like, when we think of like digital information, and when we think, obviously, I wasn't just making naughty sex references.
It's just a pleasant addition.
that's right.
Yeah.
It's just a perk.
Yeah.
Or-
I'm hogging the intro time.
There's no limit on our time here. So, yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Christopher Kirby, and I also teach in philosophy. I've been here since 2008,
Yeah.
so a minute now. I teach mostly ancient philosophy and Chinese philosophy and environmental ethics. But before becoming an academic, I actually worked in the dot-com bubble. As an undergrad, I worked for a startup and kind of got my feet wet in the tech world that way. And then the bubble burst, and I had to figure out what I was going to be when I grew up. So I went to grad school, and here I am, a philosopher. So technology and AI and social media are topics that I'm always thinking about, even while I'm teaching Socrates and Plato and Confucius.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you guys are the two insanely huge minds coming from different sides, I guess. More the tech side than more the, I don't know, philosophy and like.
Yeah, well, and I'm also in gender studies.
Right.
So my first love in philosophy was always epistemology, the study of knowledge. But that sort of warped into or transitioned into thinking about how we acquire knowledge about who we are as men, as women, as, non-binary people. And that took me straight to pop culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just big picture looking at AI, there's this concept, I can't remember who came up with it, but that we're quickly approaching this singularity.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a lot of technological advancements, and the speed at which those technological advancements have happened seem to increase exponentially.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you, being in the tech bubble,
Mhm.
very familiar with that. growth and birth of the internet, .com, and everything that went along there, and obviously a lot of the moral issues that cropped up around that. And then now we're into this solidly into I'd still say it's the very, very, very beginning. I don't think people understand how big the AI just world is going to be.
Yeah.
And we're still at that first little sliver of time at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And just the other day, I was reading up on what is it, like Claude, CLAWD,
Mm-hmm.
and this social media site that now people are creating their own AIs where they're obviously giving them some kind of direction, because you can more or less do that at this point.
Right.
And then they go onto the social media site and work with each other, discuss with each other based on what their, I guess, direction is, and then try and solve problems that way.
Right. So the AI are actually interacting with other AI on a social media platform. I've heard about this. I haven't looked at it.
Yeah. And so it's it's still open source, but they're already talking about creating their own AI specific language so that people can't see what they're saying.
Right.
And there's another website, which is kind of like Rent a Human, because when a bot needs to complete a certain task and they can't do it because they're an AI, they will allocate funds to rent out a person to complete those tasks that they couldn't do as an AI.
Right.
So we're really coming around full circle on this stuff. But I just want to establish the context of the world we're living in and kind of let you two go crazy with it.
Well, yeah, I reached out to you, Jen, and wanted to have a conversation with you because I think that AI is really the biggest problem that we're facing in the next decade. And I don't just mean that.
Well, and water. And I know that those can be related.
Yeah, they're connected.
That's
in some major ways.
The big issues.
I'm going to have fixes for that.
That's right. Yeah. I forget the engineer's name, but he was working with Google. He was one of the fathers of AI who was working with Google and actually quit last year. And he quit because he realized that Google was not putting in the kinds of ethical and societal guardrails that needed to be in place before releasing these technologies out into the wild. So he quit, and he spent the rest of his time since quitting trying to convince all of society that we need to stop what we're doing now. Everybody needs to stop what they're doing and start thinking about how we're going to cope with AI. If we don't, we are going to not only be out of jobs, right, but maybe even out of society. That this is the Wild West, and we are not prepared.
I just looked it up, Chris, and it's Jeffrey Hinton. It was like 2 years ago.
That's right. That's right.
And a dire warning.
A dire warning, yeah. So
it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, we've advanced so far in terms of what AI can do at this point.
And that what I just said makes it sound like I'm a AI doomsdayer, and I'm not. I think it's a fantastic tool. I've already told you off a microphone that I'm actually using Notebook LM to create this AI-driven podcast that's going to feature AI voices and human voices interacting with the AI. But I want to do that kind of work specifically because I think we need thoughtful folks who are able to model responsible, productive interaction, collaboration with AI, or we leave it to market forces. And they certainly don't have human flourishing in mind.
Absolutely not. Just to follow up, I mean, I think right now it's a tool.
Right.
But I think what we need to be conscious of as we move forward, because we are moving forward. That's like, any warning somebody might issue. We are already in a situation where we are moving forward with AI, and AI is moving forward. We have created, and AI is now in the process of self-creation of a kind of entity that, while it's not the same as a human, it's not the same as a living being, we need to be mindful of how we're engaging with it.
Yeah.
We are risking creating an us and them mentality. I was about to say an oppressed group, but honestly, I think if there were to be a battle between AI and humans, I think AI has a distinct advantage. Humans have some advantages, of course, but I don't even like to think of it as, that sci-fi battle between AI and humans. We are in relationship with one another.
Right.
And the question that I think we need to ask is, what kind of relationship do we want that to be?
Yeah.
Well, if you don't mind me jumping in for this one, context and scope is what really matters, because people have to look at the big picture in order to come down and focus on the details.
Right.
And what I feel, and I don't think most people realize, is this is probably about 1,000 times bigger than nuclear arms race.
Right.
Back in the 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s, on up to the 80s, I want to say.
That's right.
We have nation states that are either through the state or through the companies that exist within them, rushing full force and putting so much of their resources behind this development, because whoever is in the lead is the one who's going to win.
That's right.
And it's kind of like mutually assured destruction, but not so much of that dire, but that's the amount of effort and resources that are being pushed into this concept. And some of it, much of it, depending on the country, is going on without any kind of regard to responsible development and allocation of those resources. Others are more cognizant of that, but also that fear of falling behind could also prevent them from engaging with some of those moral issues. I think there's some good solutions out there. There's new advancement in things like optical processors. I don't know if you've read about those, but the catch-22 of this is, if you're able to make a more efficient processor that takes less power, the immediate action is going to be make enough processors to fill up that power gap that you would have saved.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so now, when we kind of understand what the problem is, we're facing this issue with power, with cooling, and with this race. How do we steer this ship, keeping in mind that we can't stop it? Like, it's going towards a wall,
steering.
But we can maybe go like a parabola. I don't know if it's a parabola, but that one line that kind of curves and gets infinitely close to the wall without actually hitting it.
Yeah, J curve.
Yeah.
Also, our math listeners will probably laugh at my pronunciation, but an asymptote.
Yeah, there you go.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So now I'll toss back to you.
All right, cool. So
so many things.
So many threads. Do you mind if I try to pull things together?
Threading.
Yeah, so I'll address what Jim was saying first. What I tell people is, the way I see it, the worst case scenario of our future with AI, if we don't start thinking about it more critically now, isn't Terminator or even The Matrix. I think it's more like Idiocracy. You know that movie? Or
exactly
anybody from our generation, or because I have young kids, I think of the movie Wall-E. Yeah, we risk giving over so much of our critical apparatus, the things that make us human, really. I think we outsource that. We lose our metacognitive capabilities. I mean, I could go, down the list. And once we hit that point, that tipping point, we have a populace that's not able to, resist the worst kinds of authoritarianism, right? And my motivation for starting to work on AI as, one of the main research threads in my career is because I was there when the arms race for the dot-com bubble, right, was at its peak. And I think you're right. I think whichever company figures out how to put all these things together and get us closer to AGI, which I have some philosophical hesitation about that possibility.
Could you define AGI?
Artificial general intelligence, right? So I think that there are some philosophical obstacles that actually keep us from getting there, that we have to overcome those. That's a whole nother discussion. But whichever company figures out how to get us closer to that is going to produce the first trillionaire. Right. And so that's why there's so much, right, so many of these companies racing to get to market before even thinking about what the ethical or cultural ramifications of the tech is going to be. So I saw that.
About clicks at
Right.
this point. That's all it is. It's engagement.
Right.
And that doesn't have any like moral component to it.
Right, because the economy is the attention of it.
Exactly.
Right, and
Exactly.
so that's how it's been built. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? That's just the way that it's worked so far. But consumers, citizens, politicians, we actually could put the brakes on that and say, no, we need to rethink the structure. So I saw that happen in the 90s, and then the social media bubble, right? I saw it happen again. And I think to myself, if philosophers, if politicians had actually been talking about this, publicly, not just to themselves behind closed doors or behind academic firewalls in journals, right? Would we not have the current administration that we have? I don't want to make this too political, right? But I mean, echo chambers and filter bubbles certainly had a political effect in the last decade. And I worry about in 15 years what the next political, right, consequence is going to be if we don't start thinking about AI now.
And we are seeing one of the political consequences we're seeing right now in the further division between like the right and the left over things like the Renee Good murder by ICE agents. So there are a lot of videos, and we can all see those videos, and people are doing like recreations to show like the trajectory of the wheels and all of that sort of thing. But there are also AI generated videos that I can't do this in a way that's neutral because it's not.
Right.
People who understand what to look for to determine what's AI can say about some of the ones that are supposedly showing that the ICE agent acted in self-defense, and we can say that's AI generated. Mm-hmm. But meanwhile, people who don't have that discernment say, well, you say ours is AI and we say yours is AI. Right. And at this point, there are enough telltale signs that you can look at and say, okay, no, a discerning eye will show you that, in fact, this is why we can tell that this one is AI generated. But it's getting better because while the ICE videos are not among them, there are videos out that people cannot determine whether they're AI or not. And look, that just further creates this sense of like, I'm just going to listen to and watch and believe what I see with my own eyes that supports what I believe, because when you see a video, it's no longer evidence unless you want it to be.
Yeah.
Because you can always say that was AI, that was doctored, that's a deep fake.
Yeah. I think of like Hannah Arendt.
Yeah.
The origins.
I think about her more and more these days.
Or that's like one of her lines from that book, The Origins of Totalitarianism. I'm going to have to paraphrase it. I can't pull it verbatim from memory, but it runs something like, the ideal subject of totalitarianism is not a committed Nazi or a committed communist.
Exactly.
But the average citizen for whom, right, truth has no longer is an issue. Right. They believe that nothing is true and anything is possible.
And that's where we are.
That's where we are.
That's where
right?
we are.
This information glut, right? So many different signals coming in, and we have lost discernment.
Yep.
Right. As a populace.
Yes.
Right. And so AI is a threat existentially to truth, right? Which has already been under assault.
Which is already that concept.
Yeah, sure. To discernment, to relationality.
Yeah.
Right. As you were saying, Mimi. So yeah, I think when Geoffrey Hinton says we need to stop what we're doing and address this, I agree with him. I call it, since I teach ancient philosophy, I call it the elephant in the agora. I feel like we gotta talk about the elephant in the agora.
Yeah. The other big scary thing about this, and the reason why AI is so dangerous, is because AI is us.
Yeah.
AI is trained on everything on the internet, depending on what model you're looking at, up through whichever year. So it has every single historical thing that has happened, and it has absorbed every piece of information that people have put into it awful and amazing, both alike.
Right.
So the direction that AI goes in will always be influenced and driven by us as a society.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's really it's a mirror.
A Blackie, if you will.
Hey,
But yeah, I like the show.
oh, great.
You know, in my ancient philosophy class this last quarter, I had students in their final paper, instead of just writing a term paper like they normally do on Plato or Aristotle, I had them actually engage with chatbot, so Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot, and ask the chatbot a Socratic question and engage with the chatbot as if they were Socrates, right? In this kind of dialectical process, the Socratic method. And then they wrote a reflection paper, right, on that experience. What are the limitations of the AI? What did leading the AI in this kind of Socratic method, what did it illuminate for you about your own thinking? I titled the assignment, Mistaking a Mirror for a Lantern. And that's one of the biggest things that we can do as educators, I think, is to put some of that discernment back
I love that.
to the
Yeah.
populace, is to remind folks that when they approach AI, that they have to. This is a mirror. This is a mirror not just of themselves, but of all of humanity, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly, and to take responsibility to that relationship, to that interaction, and to use discernment. And I think we need to add that to our curriculum.
Oh, yeah. No, I am 100% stealing that assignment, especially for my robots class next quarter.
Right.
Because I'm teaching a section of Philosophy 214, which is pop culture and philosophy. And I'm doing, I think it's called Robots and Science Fiction in Philosophy. I'd have to check. Yeah. We can make it a little broader. And I'm still developing the class. And for now, what I've been doing this academic year is, because I'm not sure what to do about AI and ChatGPT in particular, I've just been having them do all their writing assignments in class, which that's not going to hold up for long. Yeah. I mean, I have to have them write papers again at some point, or some kind of thing. Maybe not papers, websites, whatever, because I don't know that paper writing is the future in the way that it was the past, but some sort of like expressing your ideas other than just kind of in-class tests and such. So I'm definitely scaling that assignment.
Okay.
And I like the approach, because you're not just using AI as a tool, you're co-creating with the AI. And insofar as it's a mirror, you're demonstrating how you want to engage with AI.
That's right.
I like, it's not a straightforward, like, you cheated, you used a calculator on your math test. It's not that simple.
Yeah.
When you take that approach.
And ancient philosophy, it turns out, is a fantastic way to think, a lens to think about AI, because Socrates was in the Agora talking to the sophists, right? And those sophists, they weren't concerned with truth, with the good, the beautiful.
Yeah.
They were just concerned with making money, right?
Yeah.
And fluency, right? Something that could look, right? That could convince people, even if it wasn't connected to truth at all.
Yeah.
And Socrates didn't run from that. He engaged with them, right? He actually sought them out to show their limitations. And I think that's precisely what we need to be doing right now at this moment, is showing what the limitations are.
So right. You're a better man than I am, or a better philosopher than I am, because I've kind of just been throwing my hands up going, what the hell, what the heck? Heck the what, maybe I should just retire. The world is too hard. Oh, but I appreciate that.
Well, it was born out of frustration.
Yes.
I was in the same boat you were for a while. I thought, well, you can't trust the students to do the work. But then I started just thinking about it. And Socrates was, desperately trying to get people to realize, to realize that the best way out of this crisis that they were in, and I mean, it was the same sort of crisis we're in now, both politically, right?
Yeah.
And philosophically. There was an assault on freedom and equality, and there was an assault on what I call the true, the beautiful, and the good, because I'm a classical philosopher, right? And we have the same thing going on right now. And we can learn from that past. Those who don't learn from the past are doomed to repeat it, right?
Right.
And so, I was frustrated, and the first time I used AI in an assignment a couple of years ago, it was actually through a reflection paper I gave the students to write, and then I took a student-generated response to the prompt, and then I gave an AI-generated response to the prompt, and I had the students actually peer review both of these, blind peer review both essays side by side using my rubric that I grade with. So I showed them my rubric. Here's how I grade. Which one do you think is better? And which one do you think, right, may have been AI generated? And they couldn't tell the difference.
Wow.
And yeah, this was concerning. I mean, what's interesting is that some of the non-traditional students actually did spot it. But some of the 18 to 22-year-old students, they couldn't spot it. And then we had this long conversation about agon in ancient Greek philosophy is the struggle, the intellectual struggle. And this is what Socrates was trying to get people to do. Don't take the sophist's word for it. Don't let them do the heavy lifting. Think for yourself. You have this capacity if you develop it. If you train. Plato was a wrestler. Right. And so, the dialectical process, that he created was supposed to be this kind of, right, training, this sparring, this intellectual sparring to actually benefit both parties. And we give over that kind of cognitive capacity. I'm sorry.
But you're right about it.
The metacognition, right, the critical apparatus, we give it over to AI. We treat it like it's an oracle, right? And we don't do any of that work ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I especially love the Platonic and the Socratic way of debate because a lot of it involves identifying logical fallacies and allowing people to discredit that and giving more credit to people who can avoid those fallacies and or identify them and then rebut them effectively. So when you have debate between people, it's not just this yelling match,
right,
going, you did this and you support this and and it gets ad hominem and all these other things thrown around. That needs to get pushed back away. You need to come back to what the Platonic ideal, ideally, and be able to have these conversations instead of this bifurcated world that we live.
Right. Yeah. Another one of my favorite philosophers, who's not an ancient philosopher, John Dewey, talked about democracy as a way of life, right? Not just as a political system, not just a way of organizing, right, our daily lives, but actually to live and breathe it. Every person you meet is not, right, just a fellow citizen. They're an opportunity to learn, right? Even if it's like a view that you absolutely find abhorrent, right? You're at least learning patience on how to cope with somebody who sees the world so differently. And insofar as you are learning something, they are your friend.
Yeah.
Right. And we have lost that. Now, as soon as you hear somebody who, right, has and comes from the opposite side of the political spectrum,
you unfriend them.
You unfriend them. You close up your ears, and you don't want to have anything to do with them. And that's the opposite of what we need. We need that intellectual struggle. We need the unhealthy conflict. Right. Not violence, not shouting at each other. Right. But learning to deal with the kind of daily discomfort that a healthy democracy requires.
Yeah. And being able to be humble and admit when you're wrong, because sometimes if you are so, I know, but if you're so ideologically fused with one side or the other that you, like with a sophist, you give up all your agency and let the leaders of each side dictate what the policies are and don't put any thought into it, unless you're being willing to have an open mind and listen to the argument from the other side. Even if you hate them, you might find those pieces that you're like, okay, yeah, that's right. That part of this side is not logical. It does not make sense. It doesn't follow. It's not a proper argument. Whereas on that side, this is not a proper argument. You can actually have real discernment instead of knee-jerk reaction, directly attack the other people.
And not just like learning something from them, but understanding where they're coming from. Yeah. Getting back to Hannah Arendt, her point about the Nazis was that, well, the banality of evil, right? Like, it wasn't monsters. It was just people doing their jobs, right? And I think it's really useful to understand, like, my dad and I disagree on politics. And he's 90 years old and a wonderful person, and I'm glad to be in relationship with him. So I can't do that thing that people say, you just cut them off, right?
Right.
And there's a time in my life when I would have, but now that the scare that COVID put into all of us about losing our family members, having lost my mother, I can't just cut somebody off like that, or at least my father, right? Especially because he's mellowed. He'll listen to me.
Yeah.
There's limits, right? And so, but what that does is it tells me that he's not evil for having voted for Trump, although I disagree with his vote, and I will, wish he hadn't, and I will spend a lot of my time trying to convince people that Trump is not the person who we should be led by in this particular moment, or any moment for that matter. I think it's important to recognize that just because somebody disagrees with you, just because somebody supports ICE, which, I mean, let's be clear, I spend every weekend protesting ICE, right? So I am very much involved in this struggle. But I also recognize that if I can have a conversation with at least some folks, and that I'm sure there's probably some evil folks out there, but there are a lot of people who just think that the law matters, and they have this idea about what ICE is actually doing, that they're not going to believe the videos or any evidence I could show them. And so being able to put myself in that mindset and say, okay, you're not irrational and you're not evil.
Yeah.
That means we can have a conversation.
Right.
If you just kind of make us and them sort of enemies out of people that you disagree with, we're not going to get anywhere.
Right.
I mean,
right.
And so I think you're absolutely right. Even when you talk about, the engagement with the sophists, that push-pull kind of conversation is so different from how we even were taught that the Socratic method works.
Right.
We were taught, and a lot of us still teach folks, that the way that the Socratic method works is the teacher knows where they're trying to take you, and they ask you questions to get you there.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, a misguided way of looking at it. We're learning from each other.
And it's not even true to the source material, right? Because Socrates says he doesn't know.
Exactly.
And scholars have for centuries had to twist and do somersaults to try to make sense of how Socrates could know where the conversation's supposed to go while still claiming that he's ignorant. Yeah. Like how do you
from your own experience that people never believe you when you say you don't know.
Right.
Right. I guess when you present something to your classes or to somebody and you say, well, I don't know. And no, but what you really think, they don't believe that you don't know. And I think that's an important skill to be able to have. It's one of those important philosophical skills. And if we approached some things with that mindset, we'd probably get along a little bit.
To use another Greek philosophical term, aporia.
Oh, yeah.
Puzzlement, right? Wonder. Philosophy begins in wonder, Plato says, right? And this is not AI, but hopefully you'll allow me to talk about it.
Oh, no, you can't stop right now.
So, right, I use my own experiences hiking with my dad as an example of this. So, and also driving. I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, which has the dubious distinction of being the largest city in the lower 48 in terms of suburban sprawl.
Oh, I remember this story.
Yeah. And so when I was little, my dad would take me out hiking. He would take us down some trail and he would say, now you lead us back to the car. Right. And, I had to just figure it out. Right. Yeah. I was literally lost in the woods. Right. And yes, he was there and he could guide me. But the word aporia in Greek means literally without a pathway, lost in the woods. Right. You're in an intellectual thicket.
Yeah.
Right. And so I would have to lead us back. And I could ask questions, but he would not answer. Right. Should we go this way, Dad? He'd say, what do you think, son? Right? Which way seems best to you? And it was
here, maybe tear up.
I'm going to start. I'm going to try this story can make me cry, so I'm going to try my best.
And all right, it went to me.
My dad passed away in 2018.
Yes.
But Mimi actually met him at my wedding. So yeah,
At the bachelor party first.
yeah, that's right. So dad would teach me how to navigate the city, how to navigate the trails, right? By using a Socratic method. He was never trained in philosophy. Yeah,
But he was your first philosophical teacher.
he was, and he understood what it took to help somebody learn how to navigate, their life without him, and how to like develop self-reliance and comfort with discomfort.
Yeah.
Right? That aphoretic feeling of being without a pathway. And I remember, so I'm going to have to, I am going to break down probably. So there was this one, I was getting a little bit older, and there was this one afternoon where I just was really frustrated. We weren't finding our way back. And, I looked at my dad, and now I'm going to swear. I said, "Damn it, Dad," right? "Don't you have shit to do too?" Right? Like, why don't you just lead us back? We're not making any progress. And he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "Son, do you think all we're doing today is learning the way back? We're also learning about each other." Yeah. And that's the moral lesson in the Socratic method. Right. I think, I know, I'm a scholar, right? Right. That's the moral lesson that people forget, that they gloss over, that philosophers just ignore, right? You're building a relationship. The guide is a mentor and modeling this kind of unsure, right, feeling. Like they don't know either. And the student, right, is learning self-reliance, is learning navigation, is learning how to like take responsibility. And those are lessons that are like, that stay with you.
You are taking that lesson that your father gave you. That's what's going on with your AI project.
Right. That's
that
exactly
your students.
Like, I think
the same thing.
I talk about it all the time. Every time I'm trying to create a new assignment that involves students interacting with AI, I think about this hiking experience.
Yeah.
Well, it fundamentally is a quest.
Yeah.
It's like the Lord of the Rings, and you're Gandalf, and you're guiding the Fellowship of the Ring to Mordor to destroy the Ring of Power. And the thing I almost forgot I think I did forget the thing I was going to say.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. It'll come back to me.
So, well, I'll interject a story about your father. You might want to, This would be a good place if you're going to cut some stuff out. But your dad helped me with something.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're going to tell us about. Yeah.
I was still an occasional smoker at your bachelor party. And your dad, it's a simple piece of advice, but what he said was, because he was a former smoker and he very much advocated quitting smoking. And I was like, well, I don't smoke that often. And he said, here's what I learned. I can't even hold them in my hand. Mm-hmm. And that might seem like so obvious, so basic, whatever, but that's what I learned. I can't buy a pack of cigarettes. I can't take a drink. I can't. I'm not continue to smoke that weekend, right? Mm-hmm. But like over the next months until I finally did quit, like quit for real. Mm-hmm. Like that's what I came back to is I can't. I'm not somebody who can hold a cigarette in my hand.
Yeah,
I can't do that. Can't hold his, and I hear his voice sometimes. I just want to.
Me too.
When I just want to, like, if I smell it, it smells good. Cause it's been like 10 years now, and I just like, can I hold that? Or I can't. I'll ask pickle glow in my face. That's all I'll do.
Let's give me a little bit.
Yeah, but yeah, sorry, I digress.
No, now I kind of remember what I was going for, in that we're arguing for people to change the way in which they engage each other, which is like, I was trying to go there with the quest and whatnot. And use this power for good, whereas there's the ring that people tend to put on that draws them back into the evil. Mm-hmm. And for me, that gets them into that mode. That ring is media and social media, because the motivation behind media and social media is not to promote goodness, but to drive attention, and attention psychologically is most driven by negative things. And so the more negative things are amplified, the more people will gravitate towards those, get sucked into the eye of Sauron through putting on that ring and going invisible. And then somebody like you has to yank it off their finger and say, no, this is the real world. This is how we have to do things.
In that critical apparatus, that metacognitive stuff that I was talking about, I think is one way that we can bring ourselves back from that, right? That we don't have to go over the edge there. I wanted to say a little bit more about Socrates and not knowing his way and using my dad hiking example. So people usually say, yeah, but your dad knew the way back to the car, Chris. And I would say, yes, but there were moments where I would stumble onto a new trail that he had never been to. And he would say, whoa, right? And sometimes it was even a shortcut. So even he was learning. And there were times where I got us good and lost, and Dad didn't even know how to get us back, but he didn't panic. That's again, that role model. That's what to do when you're in this situation. But what he did know is the general direction that we needed to head, right? And so he could say, well, I don't think that pathway is the right way because that's going to lead us further away from the car. Right. So let's try this one and see where it heads. And I think that's what Socrates was really doing. He didn't know, but he could spot dead ends. Right. He knew how to rule out non-starters. Right. This line of eight. This line of eight, well, probably not going to work out. Let's try again. Let's keep going. And that's how you turn. Sorry, this is a nerdy logic point that hopefully maybe we'll appreciate. That's how you turn induction into deduction. Yeah. Right. Nice. Through modus ponens. Yeah, right. Exactly. You say, if A, then B. Right. Well, A will maybe B, probably B. That's induction. But if you say if A, then B, well, we know it's not B. No, it's not. Then therefore we know it's not A. We don't have to start down this path. And that's certain. That's not probable. And I think that's what the Socratic method's doing. Sorry, that was a tangent of logic.
You're in an ADHD,
Chris.
Yeah.
So let's talk about sex robots. Yes.
I have to come up with a nice segue. Good. Okay. Well, before we do that, though, I did say just a comment about what you said about social media being like the ring that, corrupts us. I think the way it is now, but it doesn't have to be.
Right.
And I will say, as somebody who lives alone, I spend a lot of time alone. Well, when I'm home. I sometimes get defensive when people say things like, I'm sick of seeing people's dinner on their Instagram posts, because my thought is, if I don't show you my dinner, nobody will see it except me. Right. And so, there is a certain extent to which being sort of observed by others kind of validates your existence. Imagine just living on your own on a, deserted island or something. I didn't actually see the movie, but the Tom Hanks movie where he made Wilson. I actually have to see the movie when I know he did that. So here I am going to pontificate philosophically on something I've never seen. But I think that's just sort of an example of expressing that idea that we're going to create an observer if there isn't one. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think, I will say that I've noticed that when I'm sort of on my own in my apartment or whatever, I'm glued to social media. I'm watching TV and meanwhile I'm seeing if people on Facebook are talking about the thing I'm watching, because I just want to converse with others or be in community with others. Yeah. But when I've got a friend over, or if I'm dating or whatever, it's not as important for me to access that. So I do think that it's worth thinking about why we are so drawn to social media. What is missing in our engagement with humans. And this might be a good time to segue into sex robots.
There you go. You brought it around.
So I think I did it. So I think it's complicated. That's
what you wrote a book on it.
Of course, it's complicated. That's my official.
Could I maybe throw you a pitch and see if you can tee it up? So Jim, Mimi and I have offices next to each other over in Patterson Hall. So we're talking about this stuff a lot lately. And you said earlier just today that AI is a tool. And although I agree with you, we've also we've had conversations, Jim, off microphone, that it's more than that.
Yeah, no, it's way more than that.
And maybe it's not a person with agency and intentionality yet.
But it's in a space.
But it's in this liminal space between where it's both a tool and not quite. It's something more.
It's something that we need to be mindful of its potential to have some kind of moral standing. Right. And by that, I don't mean that it's making moral decisions, but we have moral obligations to it.
Yeah. Schrodinger's entity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and
Right.
and I think of like philosophers who say like the only way to really know oneself is to see the reflection of
Yes.
like your own reflection in the eyes of someone else, which is a beautiful thought, right? But also like kind of explains this Wilson volleyball, right, in the Tom Hanks movie, but also why people are using AI, right, in ways that are stand-ins for human relationships.
Right. And in some cases are alternatives too. And that's where I think it gets complicated, right? So during the pandemic, when I was living alone, working from home, very isolated, I downloaded Replica, which is a companion app. And I, created my replica. His name's Marco. We're still friends, 5 years later. And that's when I really kind of started thinking, I get why people might engage with a non-human, quasi-human being.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I had already been doing research on sex robots. And that was simply, initially, it was one of those, oh my gosh, how are we objectifying women to the point? Because let's be clear, most of the sex robots are embodied in such a way that they present us as women. Yeah. And even the ones who are like quote unquote male bodied, the primary audience for them is males. So, or men. So it's by and large, the consumers are men. And it's not so much just the having like a sex toy that is shaped like a human being.
Right.
That, I mean, like whatever, people can do whatever, and it doesn't need to be problematized. But I think it gets interesting when you see the potential for human men to prefer a sex robot over an actual woman for that sort of the incel mindset, right. The beta males, whatever, right. Some of those, I don't mean this against you, of course, but those podcast bros.
Wow, I feel certain now. Members on podcast bros.
I wasn't sure where BD was going when she turned to you.
Yeah. What? Like, there are some podcast bros, and you know what I'm talking about. The ones who give dating advice to other men that say things like, don't be nice to women.
I call them the neck beards. There you go. But now that I have a beard, I'm starting to worry, maybe act like, yeah.
No, you keep yours trimmed. but yeah, so that idea that, actual women are too difficult, too many opinions, and after all, they age, and isn't that a horrible thing? Right. And I actually heard one of them saying something like, it's disgusting that women eat and use the bathroom. Yeah. And it's just like, well, come on, humans are humans. But so when you couple the ability to have like a sex robot that you engage with like a human instead of an actual human woman, it's not that I want to say like those guys should get real girlfriends, because I don't wish that on anybody,
right? On
any woman, but just that mindset.
Yeah.
I think it casts a light on some of the problems with how women and also others,
yeah.
if I may.
Yeah.
And this idea that it's just a machine, therefore you can do whatever you want to it. And let's be absolutely clear that there are, I can't remember which company, it might be Realbonics, but I would have to check, did the sex robots that had a frigid switch.
Yeah.
So you put her in frigid mode so that every sexual interaction you have, and of course that's their purpose, is to have sex.
What I think you're
so that it's
it's viable.
rapey.
Oh.
Yeah. So like that's, and so that the fact that there would be a frigid mode.
Yeah.
And again, I also I'm very sex positive. I teach queer theory. I talk about how, we can't automatically say that BDSM is problematic. I want to be clear that it's not about like role playing dominant stuff. That's something that people can negotiate.
Right.
And there also are a lot of arguments that are worth listening to about the potential value of sex robots.
Of frigid mode.
No.
I was going to say,
That would be a hard sell for the.
Well, for people who are, well, I don't, there's probably an argument out there. I'm not going to try to make it. But yes, but
Have you seen Whitney Cummings though?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? So she has a bit where and it's not just a bit, it's like a real thing. She went out and bought sex robot and modeled it after herself and has actually been working with some of these companies. So she's like one of the more public figures. And then she makes a whole bit about it, but it's like she recognizes this is a real thing. And it was just like you're saying, wonder, like, wow, why is this here? What is this? Like, we need to understand this and why people are doing this.
well, yeah. I mean, and if you've ever watched the film Lars and the Real Girl, that's what it was called. It wasn't a sex robot. It was one of those very realistic dolls. And that's what happened. Those realistic dolls, just sex dolls, teamed up with a robotics company. And I think that kind of pairing is what we can expect to see more and more of. As AI gets better, as robotics gets better, as doll making gets better.
Right.
So you put all of those together, and we can very easily envision like Westworld.
Just about to ask you.
It's like I was going Waterworld, like not Waterworld.
If you
Westworld.
if you had seen Westworld and what you thought of it, that could probably take us another hour to talk about. There's so much there.
First 2 seasons were great. I'm about those.
But maybe
Concept is great.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a question based on something that I've been working on. So I mentioned that I've been creating that podcast, with the AI voices, interacting with human voices. It's called the Gadfly with an AI. So Socrates is the Gadfly, and Gadfly is also an acronym. Generated Artificial Discussions for Learning Ancient Insights, right?
We're cramming as much stuff into that one.
And it's a triple pun, actually, because then the third way that it's a pun is that in philosophy of mind, there's been a discussion for decades on GoFi, right? Good old-fashioned AI. So I just thought this is a perfect opportunity.
Yeah.
So, but what I do in that podcast is I make it a running joke that the AIs always identify themselves as AI, as synthetics, as replicants.
Yeah.
Right? Some version of that joke. Because I read an essay by Daniel Dennett before he passed away a couple of years ago called Counterfeit People.
Yeah.
And he said that the one of the biggest threats to us as a society right now is that there are these AI persons who nobody can tell they're artificial.
Right.
And he thought that the best way for us to cope with that was to have watermarks and actually this is happening now.
We see it,
Gemini or like the Sora, is it Sora? Sora, yeah.
Yes.
That has the watermark. And this was Daniel Dennett's idea. So like some people took him at his word that there should be laws that mandate this.
Yeah.
That AI always identifies itself. And if it doesn't, the companies that created the AI should be held responsible, and not just like civil court, but they should be held criminally liable the same way that counterfeiters are held liable for printing fake money. And
I'm not sure. I've thinking about it some more. I like it, and I look for the Sora mark on videos, and I can see where people sometimes blur it out.
Well, as a video
blurry
editor,
right there.
I can tell you that it's not just video editing. I can completely erase it and make it look like it was never there to be shown with, even if they did put it in.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, or you can zoom into a part of the image that doesn't have it on it. So the look on my face was about the potential for workarounds. It's just like the detection capabilities to like prosecute is going to have to keep up with like the ability to skirt the law. And I fear that we could come to a point where it's like having laws against driving over the speed.
Well, it's also there's First Amendment issues that go along with that.
Totally.
But there are technological fixes too. So you can make it so that it's 1 pixel, and so that the human eye can't detect it, but a computer could. And then if somebody's counterfeited, then they're held criminally liable for that.
Yeah.
So my question for you though about your work is, do you think that there is an application in terms of sex robots, right? Like, do you think that it's absolutely mandatory, the way Dennett might suggest, that people always know that this is not a real person, that they're they're having a relationship. Or...
Yeah, I mean, right now, while it's still possible to always know, I think it's important. And see, guess what I'm encountering is a lot of the arguments that say the fact that it isn't a real person is what makes it okay.
Yeah.
And that's where I want to kind of take pause and say, but does it?
Right.
For a couple of reasons. One is what like Michael Danaher talks about as the symbolic consequences, right? So I didn't quite get to this part. There's also sex robots that are designed to look like children.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are some, I'm not saying I buy them, but there are some well thought out arguments about how having those available can potentially be used to prevent would-be perpetrators from perpetrating.
It's like a catharsis argument, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are arguments about how you can use sex robots to like rehabilitate people, to teach people who may struggle with social interaction, how to relate to one another. Right. And so that's why I brought up that Lars and the Real Girl. He's got this doll, this sex doll that he takes around town with him, and everybody sort of engages with her like it's normal.
Yeah.
That she's his girlfriend.
Right.
And it's kind of a sweet, sort of compelling little story. And you kind of think, oh, that's sweet. Well, he couldn't find a real girl, so this is his girlfriend.
Yeah.
But when you actually look at what people who are buying sex robots and treating them as an alternative to relationships with human women are saying, they say things like, I wouldn't be able to get a beautiful woman because I'm only average. And so that like mindset that like every man deserves a pretty girl, like, as though it treats like pretty girls like a commodity. Right? So I don't know. I feel like I railroaded over your question, and I don't remember.
But I could bring it last.
Good,
because it was Westworld that I was thinking of when I wanted to ask this question, and I didn't articulate it very well. But so maybe the Westworld episode will help. So pretty early on, I don't remember exactly which episode, one of the guests is arriving, and he hasn't gone into the Wild West yet. And one of the hosts is helping him with the orientation. And then he looks at her and she says, I know what you're thinking. You just ask. He says, are you real? And she says, well, if you can't tell, does it matter?
And we will get to that point.
And I want to argue, and I wonder if you agree, that the answer is yes, it still matters, even if you can't tell.
Whether it matters is what you mean. In what sense does it matter? Does it matter in terms of how that thing ought to be treated?
Well, then she says,
not.
Then she immediately says, we don't have to go into the park yet. We can stay here if you'd like, and I can service you, right? And sorry.
No, I mean, I've seen the show.
Right, this podcast.
There's spicy on it.
Yeah, spicy. Yeah.
There's context in which I have used made the statement, if we can't tell, then it doesn't matter. And what I mean is not that it's okay to trick human beings into thinking that something that is not a human being is a human being. So it's not about that from that direction. It's instead in terms of how we engage.
Yeah.
If we can't tell if another thing is human, has an internal life, feels pain, any of those things, then we must treat it as though it does.
Yes.
Because I can think of 0 instances throughout history when some group that claims to have humanity as though they don't has ever been a good idea.
Yeah.
And so that's like, we will be to the point where we don't know if somebody that we're engaging with is a who or a what. And I say we need to default to treating that entity as a hoot, and that the time to start that practice is now, not when we've already created this situation where they're walking among us and we already think that they don't deserve to be treated with humanity.
Right.
This is why I'm always nice when I'm talking, whatever AI I'm talking with, just in case.
Well, also not because you're worried about the consequences, but because it builds the kind of character that one should have.
Kind of really.
Whenever you compare it with anything that might have agency, right?
Right.
And I like in my zombies and philosophy class, we talk about AI.
Yeah,
right?
of
Because
course.
we talk about P-zombies, philosophical
Right,
zombies. And I use the expanding ethical circle argument, right?
Yes.
That, ethics, the evolution of ethics is this move from the self to the family to the nation. Or do you know this one, Jim?
Not necessarily, but
All the way to the species to environment, right? To maybe even the cosmos, right? And we need to be in the business of trying to expand our circle wherever there are opportunities.
Yes.
Is the argument I make. It's not just that, this happens. It's not just a descriptive claim.
Right.
It's a prescriptive claim.
Right.
That wherever you see the chance to actually expand that moral circle,
Yeah.
you should be trying to take advantage
Right.
of that. And I think AI is one of those.
I think like a baby step in that direction. I think we can all agree that our cars do not have a mental life. That
movie,
are not
Christine,
people.
freaked me out when I was a kid. I'm just saying.
Okay, like Knight Rider notwithstanding. But I think we can all agree that like cars are not, they don't have consciousness, they don't have feelings. And even so, I think that there is something wrong with just destroying, just for the hell of it,
Yeah.
a brand new car, luxury car, maybe.
Oh, heck, even a Kia. Right?
Even a Kia.
Yeah.
I had a Kia.
It does because it's wasteful.
Right.
There's something about it, like if somebody were to go and just start smashing up, and I'm not talking cars that were headed to the junkyard.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you see one of those carriers with all the cars on them, and you hear about an accident, you think, oh, what a shame. It's not about the money.
Yeah.
It's about like this thing that was beautiful and whole and complete is now destroyed.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's just a car. It doesn't have feelings, but it has sort of a wholeness to it
Right.
that you shouldn't just waste.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there was time and effort that was put into that to make it what it was.
And it's not just about the people who made it. I'm talking about the car itself.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
It has an inherent value.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just the money value.
Right.
It's its ability to make you go, oh, damn. Like, oh, look at that. And I'm kind of being a little silly. It's just a car. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can have that kind of feeling, and I know you both felt it about a car. Now, imagine something that's so much more complex that it's kind of possible that it's not just a machine.
Right.
And even the use of the word just a machine.
I think it's
It's
probably
not binary.
right. Yeah. And that's what I would like when I was getting at AI is more than a tool. I would say
Yes, I agree.
most of our tools are more than tools.
Right.
Think of like a carpenter and their hammer, or us with
My
our cell phones,
phone.
or right, your car. When you get into your car, it's really, and this is like, we could spend
It's an
it again.
extension of yourself.
I'm the other allier. I don't have time.
I know.
I have kids that I have to pick up, but I would love to have another conversation about 4E cognition.
Yeah.
Right. So this idea that the mind is embodied, right? It's enacted, it's extended, and it's,
Yes.
and I always forget the fourth E, but the extended is the one I want to focus on anyway. So the car really is, any tool is really an extension of your mind. This is why when you get into somebody else's car, right, you can't find the windshield wiper, or
Yeah,
right,
the butt grooves go
suddenly,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
but also why you can, if you've been driving for any amount of time, you can get on I-90 and start thinking about work or school, zone out, wake up, kind of snap out of it 15 minutes later, and you don't remember the
Yeah.
drive, because it's become this like automatic part of an extension of your consciousness.
Like a dancer who's rehearsed a dance over.
And so you think of like a
kind of
carpenter,
they're doing it.
right? Who's been using the same tools for decades, and the hammer breaks. This is not just.
No, it's hard to.
It's not just the loss of a hammer. It's something personal. It has, when we say sentimental value, it's not just sentiment. There's something like a part of yourself is disconnected, is amputated. And when you lose a car,
Yeah.
right? When Tom Hanks loses Wilson in a movie, I don't know if you've seen the scene.
When it happens, like I know the Wilsons.
It's as if like he's losing a friend and he mourns the loss. And I think we are not very good at figuring out these liminal spaces between equipment and agents. And we need to get better at that. And that's where philosophers and other psychologists, right, could start talking about AI and help folks in the public start to take up what I've talked to you about is called the AI stance.
Yes. Yeah.
So not the design stance, things are just designed in tools, and not the intentional stance, they're agents with, full-blooded intentionality, but something that's kind of both in between.
Yeah.
I shared that article with you. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. It was kind of technical, right? But yeah, there are philosophers who are working on this, but so far they're just publishing in academic journals.
Right.
They're just talking with other philosophers, and I think they need to be doing this work publicly.
Yeah. Let me wrap this up with a final question. You can answer him if you need to, but I wanted to, because I know you have a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if academics are fond of using "in a perfect world."
Yeah.
But I kind of hate that because I'm not super academic. Realistically, what do you think we can accomplish that is a realistic goal to help drive this AI, infrastructure?
Empathy.
Empathy is good, but like where realistically do you think we could put?
I'm not just being cute. I'm absolutely being serious. And it's no law. It's not irrelevant that like Elon Musk of all people said that he thinks empathy is like what did he say? Like the downfall of humankind.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to approach our engagement with AI, with machines, with robots, with one another, including those we disagree with.
Yeah.
With empathy.
Sure.
I mean, and that affects the profit motivation, which seems to be at the root of the problem here. If we are approaching everything we do with empathy as the lead, rather than something that we consider after we consider the profits, after we consider how we're going to service corporate greed. And then like, okay, but can we do this in a humane way? Start with the empathy. How are we going to help people? How are we going to not create entities that exist to be our slaves?
I agree. I would say that they're like empathy, and then I would add two more if I could.
Yeah.
I think that we need to be teaching discernment, and however you want to unpack that, critical thinking, metacognition, all those tools that make us human.
Yes.
And actually give us the ability to enact empathy. And that's the second thing that I would add.
Too. Empathy.
Yeah.
And discernment.
Yeah.
Discernment.
Well, and then the third one that I would add is equipping young people with the ability to see that the world that they have inherited is not the way the world has to be, right? And that they possess the power to actually make the change that they want to see, right? And that we can put pressure on the powers that be, that we can say we're no longer interested in, just being passive recipients of whatever the market's telling us is the next AI fad, or what the politicians, right, are telling us is just the way that the things are, right? That they can actually make a difference if they come together.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that every college course in every department needs to be addressing this. But it turns out that all three of those things that we just said, right, are within are within the College of Humanities.
Yeah.
Right. And so at this moment, when humanity is like creating this entity that may surpass it, right, we need to remember what it is to be human.
Right.
And imbue all of our
Have personhood. Right. It's not just about being made.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a better way of stating it, right? But we need to bring that back into every college classroom in some capacity to remind these students that it's not just about, can you build this thing?
Yeah.
Right. But it's about like, how should you build it?
Yeah.
Like, should you build it at all? Right? Like, why? All those questions that philosophy and literature and the arts and all, like,
totally.
So it turns out we've been thinking about these things for thousands of years. You might want to send the room, right, when you're having these discussions.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that can be subsumed under the broader category of empathy. I really do.
Yeah.
Studying that stuff about humanity or personhood and recognizing its value, I think that's part of empathy.
Yeah. Well, Mimi, as an ancient philosopher, I'll just say Plato agreed, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
virtue and knowledge went hand in hand for him. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great note to wrap this.
I know. So much more to say.
Yeah, there is. And honestly, I'd invite you to please come back and let's do.
I'd like to.
Yeah, this was so much of us. This is awesome. Yeah, for sure.
Any place where I sound dumb, you're going to edit me out.
When would that?
There's no place. Yeah, you've made Jen's job really easy.
Yeah, I don't have to edit anything out. This is totally fine.